Welcome to BledTalk, where language barriers are shattered and aspirations take flight. I'm your host, Samuel Bledsoe, here to ignite your English journey. Each week, join us for captivating conversations between native speakers, unraveling the secrets of vocabulary and expressions through authentic stories and natural dialogue. Let's empower your language skills and embrace the power of communication. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to BledTalk. Today is just me again, but I finally have some questions that people have asked me that I want to give you guys the answers, okay? So let's go ahead and start off with the first question. The first question today is, where are you from in the United States? A lot of people ask me this question, and it's kind of difficult to explain if you don't know the United States very well. So let's start off with what you know in the United States. There's Miami over here. There's Los Angeles, New York. Go to the middle, and that's where I'm from. Okay, and there's Chicago up here, and then you go down south for about 4 hours. You'll find this town called St. Louis. Well, it's actually a city, but you'll find the city of St. Louis, and I used to live close to there. So I lived there ever since I was born, and when I was 19, I came to Brazil for the first time, and I've told you guys before, but I came for my mission, for my church, and I stayed here for 2 years. I loved it, thought it was great, and then I went back to the United States, and the pandemic came, and during the pandemic, I met my wife. And that is what brought me to Brazil the second time, which is the second question. You know, a lot of people ask me, why are you here? Why are you in Brazil? So second question, answering that is because I married a Brazilian. My wife, she's from Manaus, and she did a mission for her church, and her mission was in Curitiba. And so she really liked Curitiba. After her time, she went back to Manaus, and she decided that she wanted to come back to Curitiba and live here permanently. So that's what she did, and I met her while she lived here in Curitiba. So that's what brought me here. That's why I'm here. That is the only reason that I am in Brazil, is because of my wife, and now we have a son. And so he's another reason, but you know, I'm here because I love my family and I want to be with them. The third question that a lot of people ask is, do you like the food? Do you like Brazilian food? Well, let me tell you. So Brazilian stroganoff is a little different from the original Russian stroganoff, or, you know, just the stroganoff that we do in the United States in general. And I love stroganoff. I think it's wonderful. And Brazilian stroganoff is absolutely delicious. I love it so much. The first thing that my wife made for me whenever I came to Brazil was stroganoff. And here in Brazil, they have a thing called batata palha. Now, this batata palha is delicious because it's like shredded potatoes that are fried. So like imagine potato chips, but then, you know, they're little tiny and crunchy and delicious. And so you put that on top of the stroganoff and the rice, and the mixture is just very good. There's a little bit of sweet, a little salty, and it's just so delicious. I love it. There's another plate here called feijoada. And I like feijoada. I think that it's pretty good. It is black beans and then some different sausages and different cuts of pork and other things like that. And it's really good. It's delicious as well. But I didn't always feel that way about Brazilian food. When I came to Brazil, I went to a training center. And in this training center, there was typical Brazilian food, but I didn't really know what typical Brazilian food was. So what happened was I went to lunch the first day, and I saw rice and beans. And I thought, okay, well, you know, there's a lot of people from around the world here And so maybe that's just a food that somebody eats somewhere. Tomorrow, it will be different. Well, I come back for dinner and it was rice and beans again. And I was like, this is weird. I guess they had a lot of rice and beans left over from lunch. And then I went back the next day and there was rice and beans. And I thought, this is crazy. They eat rice and beans every day. And then there was more rice and beans. And I didn't like rice and I didn't like the beans. And because of that, I didn't eat. I didn't eat a lot, right? I had some things. Here in Brazil, they call it the mistura, right? Which is like, it's like meat and vegetables and things like that. So I just ate that for the most part. And then I went out into the real world, right? I left the training center and I found out that rice and beans is actually very common. It's something that they eat all the time. And so after some time, I got hungry and I decided to eat some and it was okay. And then after more time, I put more rice and more beans and I finally started to eat. I finally started to eat them and now I like them. I don't like to eat rice and beans every day, but I do like to have them at least once a week, maybe twice, because it's just part of the culture and I enjoy it a lot. It's very tasty. The next question is a pretty big one, which is, how do you find the Brazilian culture compared to American culture? I think this really changes for a lot of people. Sometimes, people will tell you that Brazil is better or that the United States is better, but I think the biggest thing to remember is that it depends on what you like as a person. It depends on what you feel comfortable with and your personal culture. And so, for example, Brazil is very open and they have their, they're ready for your ideas. They love to have people in their houses and throw parties. It's a wonderful experience. If you have an idea, they're willing to sit down and listen to you. If you come over and you didn't tell somebody you were coming over, it's okay. There's no problem. They'll have a cake that's ready and they'll have something for you to drink. And there's a lot of that kind of culture here. It's a very open and embracive culture. They like to listen to people and try different things, do different things. And it's wonderful. I love it. And in the United States, it's not that we don't do that. It's just, I think that people, here they would say it's a little cold, but what we mean by that is that people just don't tend to let strangers into their house. I think we're all in the United States, we get a little scared of that sometimes. And I think that it takes a little while for us to really sit down and listen to people. Sometimes we just don't do it because we're busy or because we just prefer not to. I think that that's a big difference as well. And, obviously there's a difference in the work that people have, in the amounts of money as well. I think a big difference in the houses, a lot of people know this, is that the houses in the United States, they are made of wood for the most part. Sometimes they have bricks or they have some type of cement, but for the most part, it is wood. And here in Brazil, they make their houses out of concrete and bricks. And so the houses here are a little bit stronger, I would say, but also it depends on where you live, because, in the United States, there's a lot of old houses that are still doing great. And here there are houses that aren't as old that are falling apart. So I don't think that just because the houses are built different means that they don't last as long. Because, but you have to build a house for the temperature, for the different things that you go through. For example, a wooden house is really good where I'm from because when it comes to the heat and the cold and things. There's not a lot of breaking. Things expand and then they shrink. The weather really changes things, so I think it just depends on where you are and where you live. And a lot of people, they always ask me if I prefer to live in Brazil or if I prefer to live in the United States. And I always tell people that my house is in the United States, because that's just where I grew up. That's what I'm used to, and that's what I like. But I love Brazil, and I think it's a wonderful place. So, I mean, I can live here, but I think everybody prefers home more than somewhere else. And so I always tell people that I prefer the United States, but only because I grew up there. There are some foods and some different things that I like from the U.S., but there's a lot of foods and things that I like here in Brazil as well. Like I said, the people here are great, and they love to talk to you and to help you with things. And in the United States, people, there are helpful people, and there's lots of people who respect you, but it's not as much as here in Brazil. So I think that's a big difference in the culture. Some people might disagree with me, and that's okay, but I could have a whole another 10 episodes about culture and different opinions and things. So if you ever have any questions or anything, send them to me. Let me know, because then we can talk about it. We can talk about these cultural differences, things that you've heard before. Something that I really think is dangerous is that so many people go onto Instagram and they make all of these, in the United States, this happens all the time, and it's not true. Or, the people will be like, in Brazil, we do this. And there's a lot of Brazilians that don't do that. And so it's one of those things that people tend to generalize too much, and they forget that Brazil is a big country. In the United States is also a really big country. There's a lot of culture. There's a lot of differences. And so I don't think it's as easy to make those kind of comparisons as people might think so. The next question that I get asked a lot is, do I speak Portuguese? The short answer is yes, I do. And a little bit longer of an answer. In the last podcast, I explained a little bit about my process of learning Portuguese, what I went through to get there, the things that I had to do, and some tips that I even gave for people to study. But I do speak Portuguese. I speak mainly Portuguese with my wife, and anytime that I go out and I do things, I speak Portuguese, because speaking English is not really an option. And that's another thing, is that I love talking to people. I love being able to have those types of conversations. I like being able to ask for my own things and being independent. And that's why I speak Portuguese. I try really hard to make sure that I understand whatever it is that somebody wants to tell me, and I do my best to make it, to understand everything, because you feel better, you feel happier, and you are much more excited about being able to go out and speak to people. I feel like when you don't speak the language, you feel more alone, and you don't really know how to express yourself. You don't feel like anybody understands you. And when you can't speak the language, sometimes people, not just here in Brazil, but I think everywhere in the world, people don't see you as intelligent. They see you as somebody who is unable. They see you as somebody who's uneducated and many other things, just because you don't speak on their level. And I think a lot of Americans do that. I think a lot of Brazilians and many other people that I've met from other countries, we sometimes forget that when somebody doesn't speak our language, it's not that they don't know things. It's just that they don't know things in that language. Somebody can be extremely smart and know everything in Spanish, but they might not speak English. And because of that, some people don't see them as intellectual. And I think that that's just wrong, because, we shouldn't treat people differently just because they don't speak our language. They're trying. A lot of times they try to communicate. And so I think we should always be open to helping them and doing the right thing as well. The next question that people ask a lot is, what do I miss the most about the United States? I think a short answer would be the easiness that we have in finding things. Here in Brazil, you can find most of the things that you need, but in the U.S., a lot of things are just more available, and a lot of things are cheaper. They're easier to find and not as expensive. And so I think that is something that I really miss, is being able to go out and just get the things that I want at a decent price from the store. Here, for example, there's cheddar cheese. I know a lot of people who live in Brazil who are listening. You may say, oh, we do have cheddar. Well, the type of cheddar that they have here for us is more called like cheese whiz. It's like a cheddar flavored paste, whereas the cheddar I'm talking about comes from Cheddar, England. It's like an official cheddar cheese. It's real and it's delicious and I love it, but it's very difficult to find here. And when you do find it, it is expensive. It's a very expensive cheese. And so in the US, it's not as expensive. So for me, that's something that I really miss, is just being able to find those kind of things. And there's a lot of food that I miss from the United States. I know one food that I was talking about the other day in a class was Krispy Kreme. Now, if you've never heard of Krispy Kreme, you probably know what a donut is. And Krispy Kreme has donuts, and they are good. They're very, very good. They melt in your mouth, and they're sugary and sweet and just absolutely delicious. And they don't have Krispy Kreme here, so I do miss those a lot. And then, let's see. The next question is, have you traveled around Brazil, and what's your favorite place so far? The places that I've been in Brazil are Manaus, Amazonas, which is in the north in the Amazon forest. I've been to São Paulo, which is the capital. It's a huge city. It's very, very, very big. I have been to Balneário Camboriú. Yeah, I think that's the name. It's a tourist town in a state called Santa Catarina, and it had beautiful beaches. We went there for, I think, just 2 days for our honeymoon when I got married to my wife. And I've been to Curitiba. Yeah, I live here. And I've been to Porto Alegre, Rio Grande do Sul. And I have also been to Gramado in Rio Grande do Sul. I would say out of all the places that I have been to, I really liked Gramado. It was one of my favorites. But it was because of just how nice things were and how peaceful it was. Even for having so much tourism, it was still a good place to be. It was a lot of fun, and we were able to do things. The only thing about Gramado that I really had difficulty with is that it was very expensive. But other than that, Gramado is a beautiful place, and there's a lot of things to do there. So I think that would be my favorite place so far. And then on the next question, what do you think about Brazilian music and dance? So there's a lot of dances, right? There's like samba, there's bossa nova, there's forró. Another music they have here is, what's it called? Sertanejo, which is kind of like country music. It's not country, but it's similar. I really like it though. I think it's a good music genre. I like the music here. It's very alive, and there's a lot of dancing and movement. I'm not good at dancing, and because of that, it's not easy for me to get into the groove and start dancing with people. But I do like the music here. I think it's wonderful, and I love it. I really like to sing sertanejo. I think it's a lot of fun. So maybe one day I'll be able to sing for you guys. The next question is, how do you handle the weather here? So it's a good question. A lot of people, they think, right, that the United States is very cold all the time. But living in Curitiba is actually pretty interesting, because it gets hotter where I live than it does in Curitiba, where I used to live, right, in St. Louis. it gets hotter there than it does in Curitiba. And it gets colder there than it does in Curitiba. So for me, living here hasn't really been too difficult in terms of weather, just because it hasn't reached any extreme at one point. Sometimes it gets a little hot and sometimes it gets a little cold, but it's still nice. It's still, most of the time, the weather is pretty comfortable. And so I don't think that I had to really adjust. I just had to enjoy it and like being here, because it's a wonderful thing to be able to just be in your house, not have to use air conditioning or heating, and just feel good. I think that's a wonderful thing. And the last question is do you plan to stay in Brazil long term? I think that's a good question. A lot of people ask me. My original plan was not to stay in Brazil for a long time, but because of visa and having a baby and so many other things, I've been here for two and a half years now, and I enjoy it. I love it. It's very great and very fun, but I do hope to return back to the United States, mainly because of family as well. My wife would like to be close to some family, and we prefer the United States more than Manaus. And so we're going to go back to the United States, and hopefully we can be closer to family and be able to continue working and living our lives. So the short answer to that is no, but I'm okay with it. I love living here. It's a wonderful experience. And I think that is all of the questions that I have today. So I just want to thank all of you for coming and listening to the podcast. It means a lot to me. I really enjoy making these and giving them to you guys so that you can listen and learn and know more things in English. So I want you guys to have a wonderful night, stay safe, or a wonderful day, depending on the time. And I will see you guys next week, all right? Stay safe, and I'll see you next time on BledTalk. Thank you for listening to BledTalk. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more content. We are on all of the popular podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and we're even on YouTube. Don't forget to send in your questions and your suggestions. Thank you once again, and have a great day.